Alrighty, so I get to have a bit of fun today. We don't get these very often, so if you've been living under a rock, the state of the FFTCG meta was in a bit of a rough spot. I was actually going to record a video tonight before all of this, where I was going to talk kind of about the awkward thing about Yuna and how we're really in a pretty good spot for the game to get eyes on it because of the Magic the Gathering collaboration and how all of that could feed into this really special moment for us. And I still mean what I said, where, like, I think the meta outside of Yuna was actually pretty underexplored. I think there were a lot of really cool and powerful decks, and honestly, the conclusion that I hated coming to towards the end of, as we approach the end of Opus 25, is this is the most dominant deck in the history of the game. Not like in the same way, like, I think Refia probably at this point has been around for 4 sets. YRP was there from like Opus 3 until like Opus 10, but I don't think there's ever been a deck that was this much better than its peers, combined with a really, really miserable play pattern. And what we ended up getting was actually a true ban list and some really, really shocking things about this. So, when I was going to make my video, the things I was going to say are that I think Yuna is a complicated problem. And I think a lot of Yuna's issues parallel those of Sophie's. Yuna is objectively a pretty cool card. Same way Sophie was. And much like Sophie, I think that there are a lot of merits to potentially leaving Yuna in the format as like a 1-up power card. She's just a 2 CP 5K. She can be answered. It's not that the format can't handle Yuna. It was more so when a deck was built around Yuna to the exclusion of all else, that issues started to come into play. Which is why I think people were kind of throwing around a lot of like other things. People mentioned like, well, maybe you just can't play Yuna and Cecil in the same deck, and I always hated that. Firstly, because you'd have to like limit the name Yuna and Cecil. Like if you had Light Yuna, you couldn't have any Cecils in the deck at the same time or something, and that like that's really clunky. And now you have a third way of restricting things where it's like some cards that are legends are restricted to one for power level reasons because they're dominating the format, but we want them to be in the game because they're legends, and we like some of the effects of having them in the cards, which is what Sophie is. You have banned cards, which are, hey, these are design mistakes that we just can't have in the game anymore. And then you have whatever they did with Chaos, which is, hey, we screwed up. Don't play 12 Chaoses and mill your entire deck on turn 3. And burn your opponent out of the game. So, I didn't like that because having this like fourth restriction of that, I also felt like it would just kick the problem down the road, because eventually I feel like there is going to be another deck that puts forwards into play. Like, probably, 20 to 25 cards of your deck are forwards. Any deck that's good at getting forwards into play is going to be considering Yuna in the future. And I don't even think that, like, I was messing around with, like, Final Fantasy VI Yuna, and I did not think that variant was that far behind other variants, and to be quite honest. Like, so you start running into a lot of problems there if you leave Yuna at 3 and just, like, try to do that restriction. Similarly, I thought, like, you could consider banning Rosa, but that doesn't fix the problem with Yuna, because you can play a different Rosa to get your Cecil, and sure, the Cecil now costs 3 to 4 CP, and you have to find room for Earth cards, but you could still do the exact same deck, just you don't draw a card on both sides of this Rosa. And I think the drawing on both halves of the Rosa ended up being more of a mistake than they realized, because it kind of turned both Rosa and Cecil into a Viking. you could just pay 2 for the Rosa, then pay 2 for the Cecil, and because you drew off of 2 cards off of Rosa, like, if you think about the hoops the game makes you jump through to draw 2 cards, it's really, really hard to do. And Rosa just got to do it for existing while also having incidental synergies to color fix all of your stuff. I think Rosa is unfortunately a pretty justified ban. Which then leads us to, like, if it was up to me, I would have banned Rosa and restricted Yuna. I think that I would not have banned the Opus 16 Cecil, which is shocking to me, actually. This is a legend. It's in full art. This is one of the Dissidia arts that they've used to kind of co-opted to promote the game in the same way that, like, Terra and the Y'shtola and the Zidane and the Cloud, Vaughn, all of those are originally done for Dissidia. And they're some of the, like, designers' favorite arts, I think, because almost every one of those cards came through as a legend. All of them came in full art, and a lot of them are the most desirable full arts in their sets. And Cecil was no exception. Cecil was a very expensive card, actually, prior to getting reprinted. And admittedly, I think Cecil kind of always was a little bit of a design mistake. And not a huge one. I think that, like, there are powerful cards that are design mistakes. I think that probably Refia is a bit of a design mistake, but it's a, not a bad one. I think, Rosa is a design mistake that the Storm Rosa, Opus 14. But I think she's also a pretty fun and healthy and interesting card. Powerful cards often tend to have issues with them, and Cecil had 2 major ones that kind of both became problematic when paired with Yuna. I remember kind of one of my first eye-opening experiences for when I realized how broken Cecil was actually before Yuna. For whatever reason, there are 2 different Australian players that were on the Rosa Cecil package as far back as Opus 22 when I first got here, and they just played them for value. One of them would play it in Water Lightning, of all things, and would just play the Cecils off color. But Paul, who is probably the best Cat 4 player in Australia, and one of the best Cat 4 players in the world, would use Cecil almost exclusively to cheat in King Tycoon. And he would play 5 win cards in his deck and consistently be able to get King Tycoon into play because Cecil could cheat color restrictions. And I think that that is extremely powerful, that you could overpay by 1, play the Cecil, develop a pretty on-curve body, and cheat something into play. And I think that that's why they ended up banning it, and that's what they've said even, is that they were kind of afraid of the future ramifications of Cecil existing, because as time goes on, better and better 4-cost cards are going to get printed, which means that Cecil is going to be doing more and more, and they're worried about the future design implications. And then also just getting this field-wide tax effect. It's rough. I think that there's probably some nice things. Cecil was a card that was always in consideration if Ice became too strong in the format as well. It is a card that completely hoses Ice. When every single one of those dull freezes that you're supposed to be doing as your card advantage are effectively removed because you just can't afford to pay 2 for every single dull freeze you do. Kind of just another nice thing about Cecil leaving the format. Also of note, they unbanned Dataluma. I'm pretty happy about this. I think Dataluma has been more than okay for a while. I think Refia is playing a worse Dataluma a better Dataluma in Ferris, and I think that Ferris is a card that is one of the most overrated cards in the deck. I don't think she's ever going to be cut from the deck entirely, but I do think that she is probably likely to be going to 1 or maybe even cut from the deck. She could be cut from the deck in the future, but I think she's going to be going to 2 1 copies for the foreseeable future. But Dataluma, very cool card. Not a problem anymore. I think that he could have come off a long time ago and still been fine. It does make kind of the little retrain they have kind of funny to look at in hindsight, that they felt the need to do it. The official explanations, kind of what I talked about there. Notably, they had a stream, actually. And I'm going to use Eureka's translations to kind of talk about what they said on the stream, because I think it's kind of interesting to hear what they said about kind of their own game. So they said that they came to the conclusion to ban Cecil first. They they figured that it was always going to get better and better as the game went along, and they were worried about that in kind of the same way that um, Mione, I think, is kind of a good similar comparison to a card that has only gotten better over time. And they're worried that Cecil is going to limit design space in the future, basically. For Rosa and Cecil, they were considering limiting Rosa instead, or limiting the Earth Cecil, but they decided there really wasn't much of a difference between limiting and banning that, so they went for banning it. I generally agree. I think that for a lot of cards, limiting it doesn't really do anything. Rosa and Cecil have a large number of searchers, and also, you know, what are we limiting Rosa for at that point? I do see some people with the argument that like Wind Cecil is only egregious when you can cheat him in with the Earth Cecil for 2, and I don't disagree, but I think the Earth Cecil is a really cool and unique and fun card that has a lot of merits to leave in the game. Tagging him out into either the Light Cecil or either of the 2 Water Cecils that you would consider are definitely worth looking at in the future. And he kind of gives life to a lot of cards that like otherwise just wouldn't see any play. So I don't know that I agree with that. Like I get what people are saying, but I think that generally the Earth Cecil is a pretty cool and healthy card with a lot of deck building restrictions when he can't tag into the Wind Cecil for that. Um, for Yuna, they wanted people to be able to continue playing Yuna Viking style decks, but because the play pattern is kind of only one person is playing when it actually starts to function, they decided that they should address it, which basically what they were kind of saying is that it's not even necessarily a power level limit as it is a play pattern limit. Don't know that I fully agree on that because I don't think that Yuna would have needed the ban if the deck was actually like kind of a healthy functioning deck to play against. Some other kind of notes that Eureka put out. He's been trying to get Dataluma, Thaumaturge, and he's also said Sophie are cards that he says he's trying to get Dataluma and Thaumaturge unbanned for a while now, and he thinks that he also like Sophie could be unbanned in the future. But basically, nothing else is really suspect for coming off of the list. So if you're an Althea believer, she's not coming, or she's not going to be released anytime soon. Same for like Miyune. Guess I know I have some friends that love Gesper and Stern for some reason. Those cards are not coming back. They aren't going to do watch lists anymore, but they have a list of cards they are watching at any given point in time. They didn't mention any specific cards, but they said that all the key cards in Tier 1 decks are kind of suspect for a ban at any given point in time. I think this is healthy and good and smart. I'm completely okay with this. They said that Sophie Limit 1 is the most likely thing to come off the ban list, more so than the Thaumaturge. So, which I think is good. I actually really would like to see what the game would look like with 3 Sophie again. And he also wanted to apologize for the Glenn L3 ban announcement. Apparently they were already planning to do things to Yuna, but they didn't review the wording for the L3 ban announcement, so when it said there are no changes to standard at this time, they didn't realize that would get interpreted, especially in the West, as we are not touching standard. It was more so like we're not doing anything with standard right now. This is just an L3 announcement. He said he regretted that it led to people thinking there would be no action on Yuna. So I don't think Kageyama watches my videos for obviously, but if you are watching, I'm very sorry. I know that it was probably a pretty stressful day because when that came out, there was a lot of reactions from the West, which doesn't really interface with L3 at all. So it was kind of a lot of Western players that really did not came off as a bit tone deaf that we've been kind of dealing with this super threat, and they dealt with a format that really is only played in Japan. And yeah, I think that it's definitely. I'm excited. I know that some people will be less excited because it probably means that Refia is the best deck in the format again. but means I don't have to play against this again, so I'm a-okay with this. A little bit sad. Probably I don't see a lot of cards like Aerith seeing consistent play moving forward. Like Aerith really was specifically good in Yuna because she was cheap continued negation for some of the threats to Yuna over time. Maybe Aerith will show up again in the future for some similar purposes, but for now, I think that she probably is going to be relegated to being just an okay legend. Maybe a card you could consider as a utility slot moving forward. Huge shoutouts to Porum for trying to hold down the fort until she got adopted by Yuna. Um, One thing I did like about Yuna, I did think that she pushed the format towards being more action ability heavy, which I think it's a very high skill deck and a very high skill format. But a lot of the cards that were played to break the mirror, cards like Orin's, the Cecils, things like that, ended up making the matchup a lot more miserable to play. A lot of times, like poor Amir, like Unamir Spee, who got the Palom down first, for instance, which is just rough. And yeah, I think that just about covers everything from this. I'm gonna have a full set review for Gunslinger in the Abyss with Travis. It will take a little bit since he's gonna be he's busy for this week. He hasn't seen a lot of the cards, so it'd be kind of fun to go over things, get him caught up on the metagame, talk through some of the cards I'm excited about. But I might do like some talks about cards or things I'm excited about in the meantime. Personally, the card I'm most excited for, as weird as it sounds, is actually Fina. I actually think that Fina is a super cool and powerful card in a deck that really doesn't have a lot of love. So, thanks for watching. Hope you guys enjoyed it. I'll see y'all in the next one.